Good afternoon, everybody. So I just want to welcome you as Data Protection Excellence Network. So this is actually our, is it our third webinar already, 2021? Because I think last week the thing blew up with the WhatsApp. And so we actually did one on very short notice on the hula-baloo or controversy surrounding WhatsApp, Signal, and the Telegram. Today, we're talking about the trend, right? The trends of data protection for 2021. Every year in the beginning of the year, as Data Protection Excellence Network, we actually look back in terms of what's happened, and then also the signs pointing towards what's going to be happening in the year itself. And so far, all our predictions have come true, some sooner than later, right? So this will be very instructive for many of you. And we have three luminaries from data protection with us, right? First, we have Kevin Shepherdson, head of Data Protection Excellence Network. And then we have William Hioe, a highly experienced lead consultant with us from the government sector and now a senior consultant. And then we have Lynn Boxall, a regional data protection lawyer. And they are going to be talking about the data protection trends for 2021 and deep dive into some of these things we have seen, both from jurisdictions as well as enforcement trends and also what is coming on stream, right? Given things are happening in the region, not just in Singapore. Implementing privacy program, interesting. Okay. Data breach management in digital world. Wow, okay. Impact amendments, okay, we'll be talking about that afterwards, right? Adopting old practice, the new remote, yeah. Pop culture. Awesome, right? Contact tracing, we'll be talking about that too. Yeah. Full implementation of DPA, that's from Philippines, yeah? Okay, yeah. Okay, data protection in work from home. Yes, that is a major issue, even in Straits Interactive. And we actually have now best practices how to actually tighten the work from home policies, right? DPMP for group of companies, excellent. Super, going through super old records. Okay, which museum are you running? All right. Education, what do you do? Okay, excellent. DPA Employment in Thailand. Very good. So we actually have already something prepared for Thailand. And last week, if you were on the webinar, you probably heard the regulator from Thailand. Right? We're in touch with them. So they are setting up their PDPC already. And I think we are going to do more webinars about the regional developments, both for Thailand and Indonesia. So if you're not a member of Data Protection Excellence Network right now, I highly recommend you go to dpexnetwork.org. Go sign up, be a member, because then you'll be notified of these webinars that we're conducting on things in the region as well, right? Operational compliance, regional updates and all that. In there, if you're a member, you also get updates to videos. We produce videos twice a week, okay? And then we also produce articles and all that. So that's only for members in DPEX Network. Right now, it's free in this new normal. So it's a service that we are providing to the community, okay? So if you're not a member, by all means, go there and put it in your tab right now so you don't forget, right? dpexnetwork.org. Okay, so work from home challenges, portable devices, excellent. So I'm going to pass over to Kevin, who's going to helm the discussion today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Kevin Shepherdson, head of DPEX Network. Kevin?
All right, good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon to the participants who have been supporting us in our courses. And like Alvin said, every year we will do lots of research and we gather this material from talking to the regulators and talking to data protection officers in our hands-on courses, speaking to participants. And we've been doing this for 3 years already. And Lynn and William, does it surprise you that when we put the trends in, sometimes we put in the trends as early as November, December, and we see things happening sooner than we thought they would happen, right? And that's something that I will talk about later on the trace together issues plus the WhatsApp privacy policy update. What do you guys think? Yeah. So it's quite fun putting the changes here and seeing them come into fruition.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see how quickly everything's moving. It seems to be getting faster and faster.
Yeah, and I'm sure as a data protection officer, all of you will be wondering, hey, I'm doing my DPMP, and it's for those of you who are regional DPOs, of course, you must be wondering what are these trends here in terms of their impact on ASEAN, right? So I want to just quickly frame the discussion that when we talk about the 5 data protection trends, what we are referring here is trends that we are seeing specifically in the ASEAN region and moving forward from 2021, right? So good afternoon to all of you. My name is Kevin Shepherdson, and together with William Hioe and Lynn Boxall, we hope to take you through the next 1 hour some of the trends that we see in ASEAN, and hopefully this gives you an insight, right, in terms of how they will impact you, right, how you will prepare in today's COVID-19 world. And that's a reality. Yeah, lots of surveillance going on and similar things like that, which I am going to be going through. For those of you who do not know who we are, basically, we published a book called The 99 Privacy Breaches, and we definitely had lots of fun, right? So with William, a former regulator, yeah, from IDA or IMDA, as you call him today, and Lynn, a regulator, yeah, it's surely hard to put a book together with 3 different perspectives, right? And writing a book with a lawyer is a hard one, right, Lynn?
Hey, writing it with a marketing guy is a hard one.
All right, so we are lucky to have lots of good feedback around the world, right? Including the current European Data Protection Supervisor. So what we're hoping to share with you this time is the trends that we are seeing for 2021. So William and Lynn, are you folks ready to go through the 5 trends that we are seeing? And we will, of course, share with you evidence in terms of why we are seeing these trends and why we expect these trends to continue and to pay attention, especially if you're running your data protection management program. You guys ready?
Yes, we are raring to go.
All right, so let's do the first trend that we are seeing. So here is, we expect organizations to shift from predominantly a legal approach, right? Everyone's looking at what the PDPA, what the DPA is all about, and looking at the data protection requirements from a perspective of legal, right? But what we are seeing is a shift towards a holistic GRC perspective. GRC stands for governance, risk management, and compliance perspective, right? So if you can't just look at it purely from a compliance angle, and we'll tell you why, because you're looking at this impact in terms of the operations that you are now having in relation to personal data being processed, right? And this year alone, yeah, take a look. These are 2 very important developments that tells us that privacy is now on top of the mind, right? And on the left-hand side, I'm sure for those of you in Singapore, everyone freaked out when suddenly out of nowhere, all the while we've been told that the Ministry of Health, MOH, are the ones that were assessing our data. And suddenly, because of the Criminal Procedure Code, we now were told that the police could access the data, and people freaked out, right? And as you can see this article, people say, oh, because of that, I'm going to use it less, yeah? What are your thoughts, Lynn and William, just looking at this? And more importantly, we saw the WhatsApp concerns here, and all they did was to do a update to their privacy policy. And the next moment, there was a huge exodus of users moving to other platforms like Signal. Your thoughts first, William.
Yeah, if you look at these 2 incidents, I think there's a lack of transparency, a lack of communication to the people who are at the receiving end of providing the personal data to organizations. So that's why it caused quite a bit of unease, caused a bit of an upset among the people who have been told, and it came as a big surprise to them. Yeah, so that's why they're not so happy about it.
And how about you, Lynn, especially in the WhatsApp part and wearing your legal hat, and suddenly you see the hoo-ha with regards to the privacy policy, when in materially nothing has really changed except where the policy has to do with WhatsApp's own relationship with Facebook with regards to their business, the business application side of things, yeah?
Yeah, I think a couple of things happened. The first one is that perhaps their PR wasn't very good when they made the announcement. But what we really saw was what happens when you've got a really bad reputation and people don't trust you. Facebook's done a number of things wrong that many people know about. It's not a secret. So as soon as there was any gossip about WhatsApp, everybody jumped to the worst conclusion. I read a number of the articles. I thought, this is terrible. I'm going to move away from WhatsApp. Then I went and actually looked at the documents and informed myself. And all they'd done was clarify their communication. They'd actually done the right thing and got more transparent, which is not something, frankly, that I expected them to do. And I'd be amazed if Signal and Telegram aren't doing exactly the same things. I've yet to come across a client who says, you know what, I've got all this data, I could monetize it, but I'm a good guy, I choose not to do that.
So let's pick up on the word transparency, right? And the implications when you sit on the other side of the fence with regards to the governance, because we did talk about the fact that don't just look at the data protection law from a legal requirements perspective, but look at it from a GRC perspective, yeah? So we expect this shift to go on, and what you just saw just now is a huge awareness from the public when it comes to looking at stakeholders, right? You cannot manage your strategy without thinking of the impact on your stakeholders. So I just want to focus on 4 key points that make us conclude that, you know, hey, it's about time that you also look at it from a governance perspective, a risk management perspective, other than just a compliance perspective of personal data. And in the following slides, this is the longest trend, right? And we will connect the dots for you. I want everyone to see the effect of COVID-19, because just now we asked for questions from you. A lot of you are basically concerned about the impact of COVID-19, and now we have surveillance that's actually going on, right? And then after that, I'm going to get Lynn to talk about the stricter public and private sector data protection requirements, which has implications in terms of not just from the compliance perspective, but from an accountability perspective. And as some of you were saying just now, we're also going to be quickly giving you folks an overview of the new amendments, yeah, from the Singapore's PDPA, and what does this all mean from a GRC approach. So let me just start off, ladies and gentlemen, to go through the first part of the effect of COVID-19. By now, all of you who are listening in would agree that the work from home measures are nicely in place, whether you were ready or not, yeah. We know that this is a time where lots of digitization has been happening. A lot of companies, as we know, in 2020 rushed into enabling all these work from home measures, and inevitably, right, there were of course IT vulnerabilities, especially to non-tech savvy SMEs who just weren't ready but had to ride with the wave. I'm sure many of you would have seen lots of cyber attacks, whether any phishing, scams, social engineering happening. And because of the work from home measures, you've got the issue of trust. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen over-intrusive surveillance. And this year, we also expect to see more evidence of the abuse of contact tracing data as companies also look to survive, right, this COVID-19. So I thought it'd be good to give you some very interesting snapshots of 2020, which you will see this trend continuing. A lot of you were dealing with the COVID-19 procedures that were put in place. We see a lot of this initially in Singapore, but right now you're seeing it in other countries, excessive collection of data. And we asked questions when certainly companies were giving out free masks. I'm sure you found this familiar. Is there another motive? So I'm just going to quickly go through the slides to get everyone the feel of the impact of COVID-19. Some of you will have noticed when you look at the CCTV, it is not just taking your temperature, it's also taking a snapshot of you. Look at the camera carefully and you would notice some of the cameras are actually recording you, right? Is there a reason, right? So these are things being put in place. And while companies struggle, while individuals struggle to get all kinds of loans, sadly, there are also data breaches where information could also be exposed in terms of how data is being collected, right? So now we are forced to look at how we handle data in this new mode where people are working from home. And take a look at this. Sadly, the scammers out there, the cyber attackers, you have all kinds of fake apps going out. Yeah, take a look at this, which we found. Corona's antivirus, world's best protection. When you download it, you actually download malware into your organization. So I want everyone to think about the fact that now you have loosened the chains to your corporate office, right? Whether you have a work from home policy is one thing. People are now at home. You're mixing work and play, yeah? And these are all the potential dangers. And because now we are getting used to COVID-19, we are hearing that it will be lasting longer than we thought, right? If any of you are thinking that COVID-19 is going to lessen soon, you know it's raging heavily in ASEAN, in many countries, yeah? So what about the issue of tracking? Take a look at all of these. So as companies look for new ways to sustain their work from home measures, there are also the concerns about home surveillance. With all these are with good intent, as we all know, right? But we will remind you later that there are data protection requirements and considerations. So we then go back to the GRC, the governance part, looking at the risk part and ensuring compliance as well. Yeah, Lynn and William, feel free to add your points here as I cover all of these to remind everyone what has gone on in COVID-19. People are making mistakes, as you can see here. The people in the participants from Philippines would have seen this. A congressman mistakenly reported as COVID-19. This happened due to a clerical error. Are there data protection issues here? In Singapore, we had an IT glitch where the Ministry of Health wrongly sent messages to 357 COVID-19 patients. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the reality we're living in. We got to look at what's happening, right, with regards to the fact that we also need to deal with the COVID-19 wave, yeah? As you can see here, a Nepalese man sent from quarantine to a hospital after possible name mix-up. They mixed up the names. Can all of these happen in your organization, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah? So take a look at other areas, yeah? So what if today, someone in your organization has got COVID-19, what do you do, right? Everyone is concerned about safety, depending on which stage you are in for COVID-19. Do you share that information? And we've seen this, right? Data being carelessly shared, as you can see. Yeah, the names of potential people. And I won't elaborate this. You can read the titles here. So that all these are happening, ladies and gentlemen, right? Whether it's happening within the office, within the hospital, or even in social media. Check this one out. There was a Filipino doctor who shared on social media a patient's death, and he did it with no consent. So I want everyone to pause for a while and think about what we are going to be doing this year, right? COVID-19 is still out there, yeah? We are still worried. The Singapore government is worried. And here we have Chinese New Year coming, and suddenly there are new rules and so forth, right? And the situation is not getting better in Malaysia and Philippines and so forth. Let me pause for a while here. Lynn, William, any comments based on what I just shown you, right? The fact that a lot of what you see are all potential breaches of data protection principles.
Yeah, let's look at the whole COVID-19 situation with the right perspective. It's something that very few people have anticipated. So when you really hit organizations and individuals on the large scale, a lot of people panic. They don't know how to respond. So this goes to show that if organizations have already put in place certain consciousness, awareness of data protection, data privacy, the switch to a normal mode of working, to what we'll call an emergency mode of working, will be a smoother transition rather than organizations who have not in the normal day-to-day operations have got their staff built up to speed on how to protect personal data. That is a great transition, a great change for them.
Thanks, William. What about you, Lynn? What was in your mind as we went through all of the different scenarios as we walked back through time, right? And a lot of this happened, of course, during the lockdowns. And now we are settling down into this new mode of COVID-19, or we call it new surveillance, yeah?
Sound. I was reminded more than anything of how aggravated the PDPC gets in its enforcement decisions when people say, oh, yeah, this was just a human error, because they'll always say you should have had a control to judge it. And most of what you said, what you've just shown us, were human errors. I don't think in most of those cases, at least, somebody was deliberately trying to do the wrong thing. But if an organisation that was, suddenly transplanted out of its office environment where maybe it had paper policies in place into a whole new environment, where do you even start to think about what are the new human errors that might happen and how can we plug those gaps really quickly? You just can't if you're if you're starting from no solid base of compliance and governance.
Exactly. So as we get used to these new ways of working, right? Let's take a look at this new survey that was done by the Employment Institute. This is towards the late part of last year. Let's look at the potential impact of COVID-19 and the response here. 54% of organizations said that they required remote work in response to COVID-19. And take a look, 76% said that remote work would increase the time to identify and contain a data breach. Not surprising based on what we saw just now. Yeah, 70% said that remote work would also increase the cost of a data breach. So I guess this all reinforces the point here, right? That we should look at data protection from a GRC angle, especially now. Would you folks agree? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's take a look at the other aspects. How would remote work impact your ability to respond to a data breach? And as you can see from this survey here, yeah, the time to identify and contain increases 76% of the participants. Not surprising. Life is much difficult, right? In your DPMP, your data protection management program, especially when you're talking about remote working, right? So folks, this is purely looking at the effect of COVID-19, the resulting surveillance you're seeing, and you will continue to see this year. And we actually expect cases from the regulators where you will definitely find abuse of contact tracing data, especially the fact that a lot of the personal data you collect are also potential information for leads, yeah, especially in shopping centers and all of those. There were businesses that also collected the data on manual forms and so forth, right? So this is what we are seeing for COVID-19. Because of the difficulty of work from home, governance is going to be important. It's important that you identify all the risks, as what Lynn said, looking at the human errors that can be happening, distractions at home, and potential issues that could bring. Yeah. So let me now look at the next part of the drivers that we are seeing that tells us that the GRC part is something you will need to look at. Lynn, why don't you explain to everyone, right? Besides COVID-19, we also have all of these stricter public and private sector data protection requirements happening in the region, right? And you are a company who has got regional presence. There's lots of implications that you should take note of, especially from a GRC perspective. Over to you, Lynn.
Yeah, this reminds me of how much things have changed in the last 5 years. I mean, Singapore was a leader in 2014. We were a bit lonely in data protection, even with Malaysia and the Philippines having passed laws. It took some time to get off the ground. And look where we're sitting now. We've got the Philippines now very active in the environment for data protection, with lots of circulars and guidances. There was a new circular out only a couple of days ago. They're coming up with amendments to the Act to strengthen it. They cover both the private sector and the public sector. Thailand also, we saw new law enacted in 2019, very close to the GDPR, supposed to come into effect at the end of May 2020, delayed for a year because of COVID and the difficulties of getting compliance systems up during that. But, you know, we're coming close to May 2021 now. We're going to see new law in Indonesia very soon. I understand it's been introduced into the parliament there. So that's something that's been talked about for a long time, but now it's actually happening. Malaysia is reviewing their law as well and enhancing it. And then, of course, as a couple of people have mentioned already, we've got amendments to the PDPA in Singapore. And a lot of those amendments are around accountability and frankly, governance overall.
All right, so here's the point, ladies and gentlemen. By the end of 2021, these are all founding members of ASEAN. They will all have a data protection law in place, right? And companies need to demonstrate accountability. Lynn, please let's quickly go through, for everyone's sake. Let's do a very quick review on some of the amendments here, right? And we apologize that we're not going to go through in detail, but it's to draw your attention why you need to look at personal data from an operational perspective, a holistic GRC perspective. Over to you, Lynn. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I'm not going to say much about any of them really, because we could spend an hour on each of them. but I think that I'm just looking at what the PDPC says in their accountability guideline, and they talk about demonstrating responsibility. So we could talk about what is accountability. We could write paragraphs and paragraphs about it, but at the end of the day, it's demonstrating responsibility. What have I gone out and done? How can I demonstrate that I've done this? Under the amendments, you know, there's a bit of enhancement on a bit of clarity on appointing data protection officers, but there's more on retaining records and things like that. There's more, as we come through the new amendments, there's more requirements where the PDPC is saying, yes, this is a new way of collecting, this is a new exception from consent, but you know what? You have to document it, and we're going to ask you for the documentation, or we may well ask you for the documentation. So that all comes back to this accountability and demonstrating responsibility. A mandatory data breach notification is part of that. The days when we can say, you know, this wasn't so bad. Yeah, they've got a voluntary reporting system, but yeah, it's only voluntary, we won't do it. No, it's going to be mandatory. And you can now have a breach of protection obligation plus a breach of the notification obligation if you're not vigilant. We can see here that, you know, the current definition of what of the protection obligation, the new definition of a data breach. We'll see when we have to report, either to, if we're a data intermediary, either to the organisation or to the PDPA and the affected individuals. We see there's an assessment that has to be done. So if we do the assessment and we conclude that we don't have to notify anybody, we may well be called to account by that by the PDPC. They may well say, show us your assessment.
Now, so then tell me, right? So this is actually a double whammy, right? So the customers will complain to you, and then they lodge a complaint, and then the regulators come knocking the door and tell us about this double whammy thingy that we are seeing, yeah?
Yeah, at the moment, when somebody complains, the regulators do an enforcement and they say, I wonder if you've breached the protection obligation. They do their investigation, they reach their conclusion, and often it is, yeah, you didn't put in reasonable measures, so you've breached. That would be the end of the story. Here's the fine. Now it'll be, oh, you did a data, you breached the protection obligation. Oh, and by the way, you breached the notification obligation. So now let's look at the fine we're going to impose for that. Let's look at the other directions we're going to put for that. So an investigation is going to be much worse, I think, much worse in terms of management resources and taking up time, because they're going to go deeper to see how you assessed it and what you did.
So you can see a lot of work is now needed, right, in terms of governing the data in the first place, right? Let's take a look at the Philippines. We know that they are expecting amendments this year, right? When that would exactly happen, we are not sure. But quickly, then a couple of these, and what strikes you just looking at this here, and because we can get more comments later, yeah? But your thoughts right now.
Yeah, I find it particularly interesting to see that there's going to be a broader definition of sensitive data. It means there's going to be more things that we need to be more careful of. And the extraterritorial provision is something that we're seeing under a lot of laws as well. Our first dose of it was under the GDPR. We see it under the Thai law. We've seen it to an extent under the Philippines law, but now extended. We're going to see it under the Chinese law. So we all need to be thinking much more regionally than we have been previously.
And we'll give more comments on that when we talk about the GDPR aspect of it, right? So we're also seeing more teeth with regards to the MPC being able to impose financial administrative sanctions and administrative fines here. Yeah, today they find it difficult. So all of these will cause a lot of companies to, I guess, take the law more seriously. Yeah, and from a GRC perspective. And
indeed, in a number of countries where previously it's been the case where the data protection regulator could have a look to see if there was a problem, but then had to march down to the equivalent of Attorney General's chambers and say, please take this forward as a criminal prosecution. We're seeing much more incidences of the Data Protection Authority being able to do what our PDPC can do, and that is enforce directly.
Yeah, and right now they're basically doing cease and desist orders, yeah? But now they've got more ammo here.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, let's talk about the Thai PDPA. And again, we'll comment about the GDPR aspects later. But as we can see, it's not just a cut and paste of the GDPR. You are still seeing all these important principles here that tells you that it's not enough just looking purely from a compliance angle. Your thoughts, Lynn? Yeah.
Yeah, the Thai legislation, like the others, you have to build it into your DNA. It has to be this is the way that we do things around here. And so to set that up, you've got to look at things in a broader level. What is this whole organisation doing? We're doing more than simply satisfying the law. We're going to be looking at who are our stakeholders. And it's not just the regulators. Who are our stakeholders? How are we going to conduct our business? How are we going to assess the risks? How are we going to build this whole infrastructure where one of the outputs is compliance with the data protection law, but from a principled perspective, not a perspective that we'll get away with what we can.
As you said, we're looking a lot at stakeholders, and we see the importance of stakeholders, right? As we saw just now. Let's take a look at it quickly. The Indonesian Data Protection Bill. You will see elements of the GDPR, but what sticks out like a sore thumb here, they are the first country that recognized the danger, the threat of visual data processing, right, installed in public places, public service facilities. Your thoughts just looking at this again from a GRC angle, yeah?
So am I right to interpret this as CCTV and surveillance?
Exactly.
Yeah. So for people looking at this slide and going, what? Yeah, CCTV and surveillance. The word is getting around that there's an awful lot of surveillance, a lot of it done by governments, most of it done with good intention, but not necessarily working out all that well. And we hear stories of a lot of bad examples in policing and those sorts of things. So Indonesia is grabbing that nettle and regulating what can be done by reference to what should be done. And again, we come back to principled performance, actually.
Exactly. William, what are your thoughts, man, wearing your ex-regulator's hat, looking at this suddenly out of nowhere, right? The Indonesian authorities did share with us they're particular about visual data processing. A lot of times being abused. Yeah, the cameras are being, whatever's being installed, they are used for some other reasons, right? Objectives. Surveillance for their own intent and all that. So your comments on this?
Yeah, yeah. When we look at this, we have got to understand the context and the cultural background in which some of these specific regulations are put in place. So I guess in the past there has been a lot of abuse of people taking videos or taking pictures of citizens or their residents without informing them beforehand. And then after that, misusing those video footage or whatever. Yeah, so I guess that could be one of the reasons how this thing came about. Is something, yeah, which both of you have pointed out is unique in the Indonesian Data Protection Bill. That's not as much highlighted in the other data protection laws.
Yeah, and this is one area that we got to govern the data, right? And we've seen for the Singaporeans, we've seen a video clip of a video of, I believe, a glass door slamming or crashing on an individual, right? And that was actually distributed on social media, and that company actually got fined by the PDPC. Yeah, so for those of you who actually took note of that. Now we will take stock of what just the new amendments in Singapore. You can now see that, hey, look, it's a big deal, man. Look at it from a GRC angle. Govern the data, because if there's any breach, there are data breach notifications in all of the countries, as we're seeing. Yeah. And very quickly, Lynn and William, any comments? And we're just looking at this. The big point here is watch out if there's a breach. You got to do something because the law says so, but it goes beyond that, right? It's not just complying it. You need to be identifying the risk and make sure you govern the personal data in your possession.
Yeah, I can see that there's quite a bit of alignment now towards what the GDPR is. So GDPR has set the benchmark, and a lot of other countries' jurisdictions are looking at how to align the data protection laws closer to what GDPR is. So one takeaway for some of you who are operating in the region, or you have where there are multi-jurisdictional kind of data protection laws, it's important to know what are the commonalities and what are the differences, so that you can be prepared when you operate in those countries.
And use the strictest requirement. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know, it's going to require organizations to have many more controls in place so that they identify data breaches. A lot of data breaches, when they happen, are obvious, but with many, many cases where we see enforcement decisions from the PDPC, where the case says, we called the organisation and asked them, you know, did they know their data was on pastebin or whatever, and the answer was no. So clearly they had no practices in place, or certainly not effective practices in place. That's going to have to change. Organisations are really going to have to take responsibility.
So let me now summarize to everyone. This is the longest one which we want to elaborate because the rest of the other trends are all connected, right? So for all of you attending this call here, look at it from a holistic GRC, and that means involving the relevant folks. So at the governance level, get management buy-in, right? Don't just wait until there's a breach and everyone takes it seriously. We've seen that the impact of the Trace Together app, the lack of transparency or so-called feedback from the stakeholders, there are things that are very important. Consider the impact of stakeholders when you govern the data. Do your risk management. If you have no idea what data you have, you don't even know how your data flows, how is it collected, all the way to how the data is being disposed, you have a problem. Yeah. And the compliance part, which is what everyone's been following, guess what? The laws are getting stricter. All right. So folks, this is the first trend. In short, we're seeing an emphasis purely from moving legal approach towards holistic GRC. Don't just rely on the compliance team. It's about time that everyone is now involved from a GRC perspective. William, tell them about this trend here, the renewed focus on third-party management, yeah?
Yeah, we have been analyzing a number of enforcement cases, not only in Singapore, but also in other countries. And we have come across quite a number of cases where the data processors got the data controllers into trouble due to weak contracts, agreements that were signed between the controller and the processor, and how they manage and govern the third parties, processors and operations. And this has been exacerbated by the fact of, because of COVID-19, companies have to really look at the different alternatives to the supply chains because of certain lockdowns in the normal sources of supply, and they could not get the raw materials they need. They could not get the products they need in their manufacturing and some of the other operations. So they have got to look at other sources of supply, and these new sources could be partners they have not worked with before, or countries where they have weaker data protection laws or no data protection laws in place. So as a result of which they have to look into tightening some of these ways and methods and governance over third parties. And this is something that has been a big bugbear among quite a number of regulators we've spoken to, and then how to get companies to manage their third parties to ensure that the appropriate data protection processes and policies are in place. And one of the things that we have come across, most of the organizations, they will say, oh, but we already have all these contractual requirements. We have all these things in the contracts. But when we looked at the contracts, we realized that these were all the typical business level kind of requirements that were stated, but not so much in terms of the data protection requirements. So I just want to show you by way of some examples of enforcement cases by Singapore's PDPC of how the data processors got the data controllers into trouble. One thing that the organizations need to take note of is that even though they can delegate the task or outsource the work to a third party, but they will still be ultimately responsible. So in case of any data breach or whatever, the regulator will still hold the data controller accountable. So let me quickly run through some of these cases. Spice Concepts, what happened was they outsourced their ordering system, booking system to a third-party IT vendor that was based in the US, and then they failed to address the fact that under US, they don't have a comprehensive data protection law. So the organization Spice did not consider the transfer limitation obligation under the PDPA. And Learnerholic is an IT company that has been engaged to develop some kind of educational portal. Their students' information, parents' information, teachers' information. and the IT vendor did troubleshooting one day, and then they deactivated some of the security controls. But after the all the bugs have been fixed, all the vulnerabilities have been plugged, they forgot to reactivate the controls. So as a result, data will leak and people could have access to those confidential data. In the case of Society of Tourist Guides, the development of the portal was subcontracted to a company in Vietnam, and they did not put in the security practices such that the data could be accessible by members of the public. And in case of MCST 3593, there is a condo where the security guard actually took out his mobile phone to take a CCTV footage that is captured by the CCTV cameras, and then share with one of the residents who then posted it on social media.
Yeah, so folks, you can watch these videos in our portal. So these are examples, and we expect this to continue as companies try to adjust the new normal. They'll be looking for new vendors, right? So William, please quickly tell them about why is it important that you need to understand whether you are a controller or processor, because things get complicated. Yeah. Over to you.
You should be one of the first things you have to determine is whether you are a controller and processor in the chain of data processing activities, because if I go by the using Singapore's PDPA as a reference, the controller in Singapore's context is liable for all the 9 obligations of the PDPA, whereas the processor is only liable for 2 obligations, which is the protection and the retention limitation obligations. So that's why it's important to know which role you're playing so that you can put in the appropriate security measures. And especially when you are engaging processors, you have to be clear what are some of the data processing you outsource to the third-party processors, what are their responsibilities, what are their liabilities, and in case of data breaches, how do they report, whether they report back to you or they report directly to the regulator. And then you need to maintain a register of third parties. If you do not know which third parties you engage, then how are you going to keep tabs on them? How are you going to govern their activities? And especially in the SPICE concept case study earlier, you have also need to be cognizant of some of the cross-border transfer requirements, especially when you have a processor that is stationed outside your country of operation.
Got it. Lynn, let's hear from you, right? And this is fresh out of the ASEAN oven, yeah? You want to comment about this very quickly?
Yeah, this is very fresh out of the oven. And when I saw it, my first reaction was, oh no, not another thing. We've got too much we have to deal with already. But I took a look at it and I was interested to see 2 things. One, the whole purpose of it is to establish a common language across the ASEAN countries. So we're not talking about a new set of requirements, we're talking about common languaging. And why? So that it's more easy for organizations in the ASEAN countries and between the countries to share data, builds up trust if they all know what they're doing, and that's good for trade and the economy. So that's the overall objective. The second thing I was very happy to see is that this sets things out in the way that we're familiar under a GRC approach or under our GASPR approach. It's modeled on what's your governance structure. That's your first step. What data have you got? What are you doing with it? What are your risks? How do you treat them? And then how do you maintain your program and how do you respond to queries? So it's very familiar. It's just in slightly different words that have been negotiated at the ASEAN level.
And we'll cover more of that, right, under the regional frameworks later and its implications on ASEAN.
Kevin, I'd like to add on to this. This is a significant development because with the enactment of this ASEAN data management framework, it leads on to the bigger ambition of ASEAN as a community to develop the ASEAN economic community, because then this will facilitate trade, facilitate movement of goods and services, facilitate sharing of information.
Let's wear the hat right now from a processor angle. And quickly, William, Just come
Yeah.
out of this, and everyone should be aware. If you are wearing the hat of a processor and you look at all the data protection laws, these are things that you need to be wary about, right?
Yeah.
And regards from a third-party management, and of course, the expectations from the controller from you. Over to you.
So we have been analyzing quite a number of enforcement cases. So in almost every one of these enforcement cases, the regulator first of all would determine well, what is whether the data processor processes data on behalf of the controller, or the data processor acts independently, and it could be at the same level as the controllers. Because as mentioned earlier, depending on the role, the obligations and liabilities are different. Yeah. So say, for example, you are a data processor that's processing information on behalf of the controller, then you have to take strict instructions from the controller. You cannot deviate from there. You have to go by the letter of the law as stated in the contracts or the agreements. And you've got to implement appropriate data protection measures. And some of these recommended best practices are through data protection by design, or conduct a data protection impact assessment, where you identify what are the potential areas of data protection risk even before you design into your processes. Then, of course, you've got to look at the protection and retention principles. And in some of these laws, like Thailand and Philippines, they have got the extraterritorial applicability. And one important thing to note as a processor is if there's any data breach that occurs while you are processing the data in your operational area, the first party to inform would be the controller. Yeah.
All right, so very quickly, all these the lines get blurred, and we won't be talking about joint controllers and all of that, right? But take up the different courses, but these are questions to ask. Yeah, so that brings us to the next trend. And this is interesting, and I'm sorry, folks, this will continue, right? You will see the sophisticated cyber threats and data breaches. But here's the thing. You should expect more cases of breaches involving intrusive mobile apps because of COVID-19 and the rush towards more automation and digitalization. Yeah. So if you take a look here, ladies and gentlemen, this is based on the Ponemon Institute. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen this. Yeah. These are the top 5 malicious attacks. Again, if you are third party, please make sure that your software, there's no vulnerabilities. Yeah, because there's going to be expectations from the controller that whatever you pass to them, right, they want proof that your application is safe, your software as a service is safe. But what interests us, basically from a malicious attack, from a sophisticated angle, is this. William, why don't you tell them all about this, which surprised us, yeah?
When I first read about this, it seems very ironic that the cybersecurity firm that's supposed to develop new and countermeasures against some of the latest cyber attack tools that the hackers are using, and yet they themselves were hacked, and they claim that it was done through a nation state. So we're not quite sure what that really means, because most of the organizations, when they get hacked big time, they will say that it's a highly sophisticated state actor that attacked it. Yeah, right. So we're not quite sure, but it goes to show that right now, no single firm, no single company is spared from cyber attack, including the companies that are developing cybersecurity tools and countermeasures. Yeah. So if you look at this chart here, there are quite a number of reasons why these hackers want to hack into systems to steal the data, to have unauthorized access to the data. So of course, the highest on the list is motivated by finance. They can make a quick buck of it. They can sell the data, yeah, to people who want it, especially the marketeers, especially some media who like to get their hands on the information about VIPs, celebrities, and so on. And nation state makes up 13%. Hacktivists, for those of you who are not quite familiar with this term, these are people, the hackers, who also have a social or nationalistic agenda. Yeah, so they want to push forward some of their causes. So they hack into the system, and then they post what does their messages that they want the whole world to know about, to champion the causes. Yeah.
For the fun of it sometimes even, yeah?
Yeah, right.
Okay, folks, so we did some research, and I want you to draw your attention to the next one involving the mobile apps. We expect to see a lot of that, both from a data breach angle, as well as from a privacy perspective, no thanks, of course, to COVID-19. So I'm not going to go through all the slides. These slides will be made available, right? But take a look. The moment COVID-19 hit, the whole world has tried to adjust, and you can see COVID-19, the impact on contact tracing apps, how the malware is embedded inside. Take a look at the different countries. Yeah. Now, and this one also is something that you have seen, where there was a Muslim app, right? And it came to light that data was actually being sold, for example, right? That had a lot of flack from the community. Now, I'm not going to spend time on all of these, but take a look that every single category, every single vertical industry app, name the industry, there were leaks, there were intrusive issues, all happening. As we move into the world of mobile apps, hello, ladies and gentlemen, the issue is not just Facebook. The issue is not just WhatsApp. The issue here is what is being done in our data with regards to mobile apps as well. Yeah. So as you can see, when we scan the worldwide scenarios, the worldwide related privacy breaches, every single industry, including food delivery, research, kids, name it, there's been a breach. Which nicely leads us, ladies and gentlemen, we thought we also take stock of what's happening in Singapore. And as you all know, in 2020, for about 4 months, there was non-activity. That includes 2 months of circuit breaker. So we did a stock take. Yeah. So as we've seen over the years, the calendar year 2019 was a milestone because we had the total $1 million fines of SingHealth, right? Involving iHIS and SingHealth, total 1 million, and yes, 640K of fine. Yeah. Now take a look. 54 organizations were involved in enforcement cases, but that's only 8 months of data. Now, a lot of you know that the PDPC itself, they didn't actually go to office. There was a lot of silence from the regulator, but yet 54 companies got into trouble, and they dished out a total of 425,000 in fines. Lynn, a penny for your thoughts, just looking at this.
I think that we can expect a surge when they make up for that 4 months.
Exactly. There's going to be a lag, right? And don't be surprised, you're going to be seeing issues directly related to abuse of data and COVID-19. So it's a matter of time, right? And you're going to see mobile apps as well. Yeah. So expect that in 2021. And we also got curious, ladies and gentlemen. We decided to scan the horizon in the EU horizon. Take a look, right? We looked at the relevant GDPR cases. Notice that the whole of last year, it almost doubled. Now, we are going to be having a dedicated webinar. So for those of you who've got your CIPPE or are doing GDPR or covering GDPR, yeah, you can join us in a separate webinar. But what we want to share with you is a very quick breakdown. These are the top 10 countries. Basically, every single country in the EU has already started enforcement. And these numbers are expected to go up like crazy. And quickly, just looking at this data, something strikes you immediately as you first saw the data, yeah? And quickly, would you like to just share your thoughts on it? And the numbers will only go up even more, yeah?
Yeah, Spain jumped out to hit me. And I need to do a bit more research on the Data Protection Authority there, but I certainly know that on the competition authorities in Europe, you'll get the same kind of distortion from Spain, because when they fine somebody, instead of the fine money going into consolidated revenue for the government, it goes to fund the regulator. So they've got a very big incentive to impose lots of fines and big fines.
All right, so we're going to analyze this a little more, but folks, a lot of the cases that you're saying can happen in your country as well, right? And that's something we will share more in another webinar. Our point to everyone here is this, yeah? With regards to the importance here to demonstrate accountability. We already know you need to look at data protection from a GRC angle. You just saw the importance of third-party management. You saw the continued breaches that's going to happen. If it does happen, you will need to demonstrate accountabilities. 3 simple words: ownership, responsibility, and evidence, right? And we want to remind everyone here, if you are a data protection officer, if you are doing data protection, there are 4 Ds that you cannot ignore. Make sure your DPO owns the problem with the responsibility, is being responsible. The DPIA is your evidence. Your data protection by design needs to be embedded, not as an afterthought, and all of these should be covered in your data management program, right? And you can't implement your DPMP if you don't have your GRC. You're not governing it. You're not aware where the risks are. So this is a gentle reminder for all the folks involved in data protection. Please look at the 4 Ds, right? While this is happening, we know that companies are also taking the data protection trends seriously. And we thought that we want to remind all of you, for those of you who attended our webinar on the job search, just want to remind everyone, right, that this is the Singapore's data. What you are seeing is just 1 month of sample data, right, which is about the same period. We've compared it across 5 years. And last year, even despite COVID-19, on a single month, there were as many as 245 related job positions. Yeah, you can go to our DPEX website to read more about the research. But the point here is more people, the importance of data protection expertise will continue to grow based on what we have just shared with you just now. More laws, more requirements of DPOs, more breaches. Yeah, William, looking at this, what are your thoughts, man? Just 1 month, because if I were to take 245, this is in August to September's data, right? The month of August. And you just times 12, that's easily over 3,000 positions in the market available.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from you? Because we know that 30% of this is achieved in the government sector, and holistically across the economy of Singapore, we expect to see more positions available, right? But it's still minuscule. Your thoughts on this?
My first reaction when I see the statistics is that the organizations are taking data protection more seriously, and they realize that data protection jobs are not something they can just give it to someone who's very free, or someone who's already taking a compliance role or whatever. But they are now looking at the appropriate people being put in place to govern and also make sure that all the activities, data protection activities within the organization are carried out properly according to a dedicated data protection management program, and also acquiring the right competencies and skills to be able to function in the job effectively.
So let's pick up the word competency. So if you are into data protection today, it's worthwhile, right, to know about the GDPR, because that brings us to the 4th trend. We will see the GDPR and the ISO 2770 are firmly established as reference standards, as de facto standards, especially from an angle of operational compliance and used especially also in your data protection management program. All right, so it pays to know the GDPR, but yet, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this, right? We know from the data protection laws, and I'm sure Lynn, you can elaborate this as we cover the next slide. The countries, although they use GDPR as a reference, they did not cut and paste. They actually adapted certain GDPR principles, based on their local requirements, their local culture, and so forth. So we know that the influence of GDPR is huge. And of course, the question that everyone has been asking, we have amendments in the Singapore's PDPA, and people obviously will be asking, okay, does that move towards GDPR? Because take a look at all these changes here. Again, we're not going to go too much into detail, but people doing data protection in the EU, those in Philippines, you have this concept of lawful processing, And if you recall, for those of you who took our courses, we always share with everyone a simple acronym, the 3 C's and the 3 I's, right? The point we are trying to make here is that whenever you process personal data, make sure you ground it and you are able to justify it. And if you look at Singapore's jurisdiction, it's consent first, and then the rest are exceptions. So then you want to quickly, given the little time we have left, would you like to give your thoughts, looking at the fact that you can actually map it at least from an operational angle, Of course, bearing in mind that human rights is not something we're looking from a Singapore's perspective, but apparently the three C's and the three I's now are very much aligned, especially from an operational angle. Your thoughts then?
Yeah, they're even more aligned after these amendments. And prior to us getting locked down, I was often down at the PDPC and talking to people, and I'd say, oh, I think you're moving closer to GDPR, and they would deny it. So they probably still deny it. But in practice, yeah, we're getting pretty close. We get consent, but we've got a whole lot of exceptions from consent. We're getting a legitimate interest exception from consent, albeit with some bells and whistles and some requirements that are different from the GDPR, but we're closing the gap.
Yeah, and I'm sure we don't have the rights of the individual from a human rights perspective.
Right.
No, there are no rights related to legitimate interest. Obviously, you can access your data and so forth, right? But that's another part that's different from Singapore, which I'm sure the PDPC will remind everyone, right? We're not looking at it from a human rights perspective. All right, let's take a look why. William, your thoughts on this, right? Why we are saying that GDPR will be established as a de facto reference, and the fact that all the ASEAN countries have, in one way or another, adapted the GDPR principles. Yeah, so over to you, William.
Yeah, if you can look at it, the GDPR is like a gold standard or Rolls Royce of all standards. So it states the strictest requirements. So it will set the upper benchmark for countries to align their data protection laws with. So I would imagine that if the countries want to aspire to that level of data protection maturity, then they would want to aim towards that. Yeah, but having said that, they also need to not just copy wholesale, to understand the context and the rationale of why some of the provisions in the GDPR come about, and adapt it for their own use. Say, for example, the GDPR is based on human rights, whereas in other countries, data protection laws is based more on consumer rights. So they can't just lift it off, copy word for word. They have to understand the context and modify it to suit their particular requirements for their own countries.
So now we've got different flavors of the GDPR, right? Which leads us to the next slide. Quickly talk about the ISO 27701, why that would be important, right? So not everyone would know about the new ISO standards. So very quickly, let's close off with the last trend.
Yeah, this ISO 27701 is actually a marriage between information security and data privacy. So previously, the ISO 27001 and 27002 will focus mainly on information security. And now the industry, the players from both sides, the data privacy professionals, as well as the information security specialists, realize that these two must work hand in glove, that you cannot have privacy without information security. So that's why these two standards come together to have best practices being encapsulated within the standard that can be used internationally for organizations who want to use this as a reference standard. So you can see that a lot of the things that span both information security and data protection are covered here: confidentiality, analysis of risk, identify processor requirements, controller requirements, internal processes, training, and so on. Yeah.
And it encompasses GRC, as you can see. Yeah.
Yes.
So just close off this trend before we cover the last trend, right? So give us your thoughts very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. So as mentioned earlier, ASEAN, there's this new vision to have a ASEAN common market or the economic community. So part of this is important to align with a model that has been proven successful, and that was the EU model. It started with the European Economic Community, the EEC, that evolved into the EU. So ASEAN is going along that path as well. So they're using that as a template to move forward. So the next big thing that's coming up with the ASEAN Economic Community. So because of that, they have put in place the data protection management framework, the DMF, which Lynn covered earlier. Yeah, and this will have to be based on standards, based on references that the countries within the ASEAN community can then align with and abide by.
Exactly. So we will see We will see pressure from the regional teams, right? Saying, hey, look, all your laws are different, right? Obviously, the ISO 27701 is jurisdictional neutral. And this is one way that you're able to, so to say, normalize, or for those of you who took your CIPM, rationalize the requirements. Which brings us to the last trend, right? From all of you, as you can see, trend 1 to trend 4, right? All of these leads us to our last one. As public awareness of data protection and privacy grows, so will certification, both at the corporate and the individual level. And we're going to see this momentum continuing 2021 and the years to come, right? So for all of you here, I'm sure you know, based on what we've just covered, you are going to see this momentum happening, right? As I said, corporate and individual level. I already covered the ASEAN. All the founding ASEAN members will have a data protection law. GDPR is a standard. And because of the pressure of the requirements of a DPO, you're going to have a shortage of DPOs. Yeah, so enforcement of the breaches will remind us why we got to be on our toes. And of course, the regional officers playing ball, especially the regulated industry. This obviously would create lots of opportunities for all of us on this call, whether you are looking at it from a career perspective or you're looking at your own in terms of a business opportunities. So I want to remind everyone that there are corporate frameworks, data protection frameworks in place. Just now we talked about the ASEAN framework, right? I don't want to elaborate any of these. You can read our slides, yeah? But the point here is that we want to talk about the corporate side of things. You can see here that the CBPR is being promoted, yeah? And I'll let Lynn comment on the adoption later. For those of you who are not familiar, this is the APEC privacy framework that focuses on the cross-border privacy rules. I'm not going to elaborate it, but I would like everyone to consider that there are only 9 participating members, yeah? And for you to get the CBPR, you must first have an assessor, what they call an accountability agent, yeah? So if you have one, then only can you be certified for CBPR. And I'm going to cover that. We will be looking at the number of companies who have opted to get certified under CBPR, right? And so that's the APEC perspective. And if we were to scope it down to ASEAN, right? I'm not going to cover this. You will notice that we covered the data management framework. And as what we heard from William just now, right? We're looking at 2025 as the blueprint. This is their digital governance plan. But take a look at the data management framework in a little more detail. Companies now have a standard, right? But there is no trust mark at the ASEAN level. Take a look at all of these. However, these same factors are only in Singapore's PDPA, or rather in Singapore's trust mark. So you can see here, yeah, we expect to see more adoption of Singapore's trust mark. You can read about it. And I guess the important point that we want to share with you is trust mark cannot be bought. For those of you who got aspiration to get your company to be certified, first question you got to ask is, do you even have an established data protection management program? Get that done first before you even do anything. And it takes a while to get your certification. So Lynn, can you just comment on this? I thought we make it interesting for our readers before we close off, yeah? That they look at the DPTM, it has grown double, yeah? Sorry, there's a typo there. In last year, into calendar year 21, in January, it is now 42 companies, right? So that's almost doubled from the previous year. So CY19 to CY20, calendar year 19 to calendar 20, it grew. But take a look at APEC. The numbers over the years have been flat. Your comments, Lynn?
Yeah, I was going to describe them as choppy, but yes, they've been flat. But keep in mind that this is the sort of thing where you need 2 sides, you need 2 countries, you always need pairs to make these things work. And Singapore is very much taking the lead on this. They've changed the transfer limitation obligation to include certification, APEC certification. So it's going to be easier for companies in Singapore to receive personal data transferred from other countries. Singapore is really taking a lead in trying to set a good example, I would say, to the other countries so that this can really start to get some traction. We're not seeing it yet, but these things take time.
Yeah, I mean, notice that Singapore added two. If they didn't add, I think they were Great Eastern and Crimson Logic, right? But we don't add Singapore in. And again, we are limited by the fact that I think Philippines is next, right? And you will see them contribute to the companies being awarded the CBPR certification. So it's been pretty slow over the years, right? But from a corporate trust mark perspective, definitely we are seeing more adoption. So a lot of companies will want to adopt DPTM because it gives them a competitive edge. Let's switch gear to the individual from an individual perspective, yeah? So we now know that there are a lot of professional qualifications in the market, depending which country you are from, yeah? So a lot of you on the call, if you have seen the first 4 trends, please continue your efforts in terms of getting your qualifications. Most popular ones, of course, are the IPP International Certification. I see a lot of people now in the market saying that, oh, they got an advanced diploma in data protection from the SMU Academy. And we're also seeing universities in Philippines, right, other countries also offering data protection courses. But I want you all to focus on the efforts of what PDPC is doing in Singapore and NPC, the National Privacy Commission, is doing in the Philippines. By now, all of you know that the government, the regulators are playing a very important role, right, in ensuring that the expertise of the DPOs meet the regulators' requirements. So they set the benchmark, right? So Singapore, we have the practitioner cert in personal data protection. For those of you who have not taken it, please go and take the course itself. We know that NPC has outsourced this year. They are going to be giving the ability for outsourced organizations. They're going to accredit the organizations to be able to conduct the ACE program in the Philippines, right? So more and more data protection officers will be certified, so to say. Yeah, so that's another means for all of you who have not gotten your certification. Go for your local certification. Some of you, as you've seen, because of the impact of the ISO 27701, there are courses available in the market, right? You can find them. They're also available on our DPEX network. What I do want to do is to quickly close up today's session, right? A lot of you are also taking your SMU courses, and we want to show you some stats, yeah, in terms of how a lot of participants, you are now moving to get your academic qualification. Some of you are more ambitious. You're going for international certification with regards to IPP. A lot of you are, if you know that you're already doing GRC for personal data, why not expand it to GRC as a whole? Because we see that element important at the corporate level, right? So I thought we share you some statistics. There are many. These are the number of seats that participants have actually taken. And notice the numbers are flat because of the COVID-19, 3 months, right? There was no activity, and then a whole bunch of people that are actually taking courses. So if you have not taken them, right, this COVID-19 time is a good time, right, for you to take on your learning journey with us or with whichever provider that you are thinking of. And to quickly end off, I'm not going to go through all of these, yeah? Folks, we just want you all to be aware, right? SMU has got an advanced cert. So if you are a DPO, right, take the advanced cert in data protection operation excellence, then you can then decide as a roadmap. You could do your international certification after that. For those of you in legal and compliance, yeah, you can consider taking this. Notice there are a whole bunch of exceptions for all of you. Yes. And the legal compliance folks, we do have data protection principles that covers all the countries. And here's a piece of advice. Go and understand the laws, because a lot of them are grounded, as we saw just now, borrowed from the GDPR. Yeah. So to close off the next few slides, for those of you who are already data protection officers, you might want to go for your GRC certification from OSEC, right? You can find out more. For those of you who got basic data protection knowledge, go for your IAPP certification. Yeah, so to close off, ladies and gentlemen, we thought we show you some stats. These are only certifications done in ASEAN from the Data Protection Network, Data Protection Excellence Network, meaning all of those participants that got certified within the Data Protection Excellence Network, right? It was slow last year. No thanks to COVID-19, 3 to 4 months of inactivity, but yet the numbers are strong. You can see there's a lot of demand, right? If you haven't got your certifications yet, take a look at how little the numbers are in our part of the world. And if you are a data protection officer or you are performing a data protection role, this is the numbers of in our part of the world of people who are getting certified, right, as a certified privacy manager, CIPM. So go for all these courses. For those of you in Singapore, there's government funding, right? So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to give you all a very quick summary of the 5 regional trends. We will want all of you to take into account these trends, look at the implications on your organization, look at the implications on your own career path, yeah, what it means to you as well. Before I end off, William, any closing words from you as we look at the summary of the trends that we just covered?
Yeah, this sort of sums up the most of the important issues which people have put on the Mentimeter from the beginning. So some specific areas that are not addressed will address later during the Q&A session. But one thing I want to highlight is that we have been studying the evolution of data protection laws around the world. Ideally, it will have started with governance, risk management, and comply in that order, taking a top-down view. But unfortunately, in most implementation of data protection law, it starts off with the bottom-up, from compliance. Then they move up to risk management. Then they finally realize that it's governance that is very important. And also I want to stress that when we talk about GRC of data protection, it's not just looking at the data protection in isolation, because your GRC is enterprise-wide. So you should look at data protection as one important component of your enterprise governance, risk management, and compliance, so that you can, at the organization level, look at all these things holistically. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Lynn, what would your closing words be, right? Wearing your hat as a legal professional. Yeah.
I think the pace of change is going to get faster. And I think I hope there's going to be a realization that data protection compliance might be compliance with law, but it's not a legal issue. It's a whole of organization issue. And everybody has to play a part. There might be some laws that provide the guidance of the direction that you need to go on various issues, but operationalizing it is the key.
Thank you so much. With that, I shall give back to Alvin if you're on the call.
Excellent. Yeah, Lynn, you want to say something?
I was going to pick up on one of the questions I saw, given my remarks just then. I saw that one of the questions was, who should be the DPO? Should it be legal? Should it be IT? Should it be somebody else? So I'm going to say definitely it should not be legal. And I apologise to any of the lawyers in the session. But Kevin, why is that so? Why should it be somebody more operational?
You asking me that question. If you take a look at all the enforcement cases, I hate to say this, but tell me the last time that a lawyer got into trouble, right?
That's the answer I wanted.
And yeah, and that's my worry for the legal folks, because I'm sure you are frustrated, right? Because you really need to understand the operations, how the data flows within the organization. If you know that, by all means, do it, right? Back to you, Lynn. Your recommendations is no, yeah?
Yeah,
basically you need to have operational knowledge.
The person who asked the question said he wanted one, or she, or whatever, wanted one straight answer. And I'm sorry to say there's no one straight answer. It depends on what's going to work for your organization.
All right, back to Alvin, yes?
Right, thank you, Lynn. It's a very common question, right? And I think so far we've seen the ones who are successful are quite clever in co-opting a committee, right? So it won't be one person doing it. Yeah, so that will be Second question from the Mentimeter. Okay, a few questions along these lines. The implementation of the DPMP in light of the PDPA, what are the things that are changing for them in their compliance effort? Maybe William? Or Lynn, yeah, sure.
I'm going to say the amendments will make it more important. For details, if you haven't taken the prac cert already, take the prac cert.
Okay. William, any advice from consulting perspective that you're deeply involved, those who are halfway there and then now with these amendments?
Yeah, we certainly have to review their policies and SOPs that are already in place. It will not be a total revamp. It's just strengthening certain areas. So it's an evolutionary kind of journey. So they don't have to go back to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I just want to bring up my point here, Alvin. I always said in the classes here, right? When a breach happens, so we know that the amendments have got a data breach notification, right? But the breach happens because of three things. I want to remind everyone again, because you didn't identify the risk in the first place. So for those who are doing a DPMP, look at all the risks here, right? And when you do identify the risks, a lot of you plan to put in controls, but guess what? You're too busy and the controls are never implemented. So the breach happens. And the last one is, if the breach does happen and you identify the risk and you implemented it and yet it happened, means they were not effective. So the amendments bring to light the importance, right, of you being aware of the risks, because now there's by law, you will need to report it to the regulators. Yeah. Back to you, Alvin.
Yeah, so you mentioned breach, and that actually is a new part of the amendments. So perhaps you want to speak to in terms of what did you introduce recently, even with people from the broadcasting on handling breach, because this was one gap we saw a lot in firms, right? Handling breach. Maybe you want to say a few things about that?
Yeah, because we look at
because
we look at the impact, we felt that, and I'm sure William does agree with this, we felt that a lot of organizations are not ready for a breach, and a breach, as you know, creates a crisis. Yeah, so that's why for those of you who attended the crisis com and data breach, yeah, it's always important to understand the importance, because a breach creates a crisis. So we actually launch a new course going into what you need to do specific in a crisis, because there are regulators' expectation, right? A lot of you would know that there is a acronym they use, a methodology of how to respond to a breach called the CARE approach, right? So we decided to cover that, and we actually work with Jill Nibrona and Sharon Tong, who are from Channel News Asia, to give you a holistic view of how to handle a breach, both from a regulator's perspective as well as a crisis communications perspective.
Excellent. Yeah, so that's another impact to the new amendments, right? So that adds on to capability you need to build. Okay, so the other question that came about was, what do you see the role of ASEAN in the DP regime in region? Possibility of a joint economic community approach along the lines of EU. I think you did answer that within the presentation, unless you want to add some color to this.
Lynn, you want to do my 2 cents worth is it's hard to compare the EU, because EU is a political and economic union, right? So it's going to be difficult to look at a one-to-one comparison. Yeah, and we do know that at the AEC, as what you heard from William just now, the ASEAN governments have got together to define what they call digital governance, right? There are a bunch of pillars which you can learn about in our courses here. And I think for our part, though, the focus is purely on commerce. Right, it's going to be a very different perspective.
Trade and commerce.
Trade and commerce. I just want to remind all of you, in the world of data protection, there are 3 themes that affect data protection developments: human rights, yeah, innovations in technology that create social concerns, and the last one is cross-border trade. Yeah, so if you use those 3 points, the human rights is out of the way. It's mostly the concern about social innovation, and more importantly, the e-commerce aspect, right? William, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, so ASEAN has always been a community that facilitates intra-region kind of cooperation in trade, not so much a political union as yet. So it's more for economic reasons, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So the other question is the impact of the rash of COVID measures. So what do I do with all the visitation forms and personal data collected from all these procedures?
Where's
So
your,
Lynn, perhaps you
where's
want
your
to
document retention schedule? Hmm?
As what Lynn said,
Okay.
right? You got to determine your retention schedule. There's no need, when you fulfill the business or legal requirement, get rid of it, right? And you already have an idea of how long you should be keeping that data, right? And look for all kinds of data that you've been contacting, especially those that you collected manually, right? Watch out those, because when we go around walking the shopping malls, for those people who don't have the tokens, or in countries like Philippines, you see them all over there, right? And where are they kept? Get rid of them. A quick answer, yeah, based on what Lynn said, according to your retention schedule.
Yeah, actually, you
All
can
right.
take some guidance from Trace Together. I think under Trace Together, the
Hmm.
government has established a retention policy for those data they capture for contact tracing purposes. You can use that as a guide. I believe it's about 29 days or something like that. Yeah.
21, I think, but
Yeah.
it's still a good guide. I mean, set it at
Mm.
28, and at the end of each month, ditch
Yeah.
everything that's more than a month old.
Mm.
I
Okay.
do have these visions of, at some time when we get back to the office, there'll be drawers full of these forms, and somebody will go, oh, some marketing leads, let's use them.
Yeah. So excellent, excellent. Thanks. Next, I think these are more regarding the training. So somebody I think was interested in CIPM. Yes, in trying to estimate the degree of difficulty. It says, what's the passing rate of CIPM here?
All right, maybe I
Any
can.
indications?
Yeah, so we have probably one of the highest passing rates. Remember, okay, obviously you can take CIPM for lots of vendors here, but you got to take the cost from vendors that have been training this for years, right? And at DPEX, we take pride in doing this. Our pass rate is about 80%, right? But here's one fact for all of you: if you don't study, you will fail. If you don't have any hands-on experience, this is not a primary school exam, right? If you're not confident, if you don't have any hands-on experience, then take other courses like the advanced to make up for the lack of experience, the lack of hands-on, right? But we do have one of the highest rates. Obviously, when you go out there, there's going to be a lot of copycats out there, right? They take a CIPM and then they suddenly think that they can teach a CIPM without really understanding the material, right? And I guess we are blessed in the sense that our book is also being used as a reference book for CIPM. So in short, the passing rate is pretty high, right? And we give you lots and lots of tips. Yeah. Back to you,
Yeah.
Arvin.
Interesting. I just noticed he's talking about our book. The three authors of the book are actually right here on this conference. All right. So yeah, and so hopefully that answers that question for your CIPM. And then, another question related to that is, should regional DPOs do CIPM or CIPPA?
All right, so I'm aware that all of us, especially Lynn and William, they do the CIPPA, yeah? And here's my take. If you are a data protection officer, the standard to go for is go first with the CIPM. And the CIPM uses the the GDPR, right, as a reference. So take the CIPM course first, yeah? Get the credentials to tell people that you really know what you're doing. And as you saw from our analysis, GDPR is the reference standard. So CIPM leverages or actually touches GDPR from a DPO perspective. So take that first. And then from a regional perspective, take CIPPA. But I'm sure William and Lynn, please tell them what the CIPPA actually cover, which may not be as holistic as what we want them to be, yeah? What we want the certification to be.
Yeah, it covers Singapore, Hong Kong, and India, as well as doing a really good foundation on how data protection law came into being and what the foundations of it are. So, for people in Singapore, not so many people have responsibilities for Hong Kong, for example. So sometimes things like the SMU certs are more relevant because they're more general. It always depends on what you're trying to achieve.
All right, there's a question, Alvin, on the ACE program. Can it be done remotely? Now, I just want to reinforce to everyone here that the ACE program is an initiative of the National Privacy Commission. So unless you are a Filipino, yeah, if you are a Filipino, then by all means, you could potentially take it remotely, because now courses are done in Zoom, right? For example, Straits Interactive, the DPEX Network, we have applied for the accreditation to be able to do that course. So, but then again, we need to check the regulators. My understanding is it is meant for the folks in Philippines. Of course, we understand that there are Filipinos outside Philippines, so that's something we can definitely explore, pending advice from NPC. Yeah, back to you, Alvin.
Excellent. So the next question was, I guess, is trying to see in terms of certification in privacy and certification in GRC. So what is the path they are taking and what's the difference?
Yeah, maybe I can take that and
So
then
more of a road.
yeah, so maybe and then William, you or Lynn can add on, right? So the IPP ones are focused on data protection, yeah, while the GRC one is actually awarded from OSEC, the organization that invented the term GRC, governance, risk management, and compliance. So one focuses on data protection, that's IPP, while OSEC, which offers the GRC certification, they focus holistically on the organization. Although they did do a partnership with us, where in our data protection hands-on, they do give you a cert in GRC, but that is intended for you to be certified holistically as a GRC, or they call it GRCP, a governance, risk compliance, and professional certification. Okay, so in short, IPP focuses on data protection. The OSEC GRC focuses on all aspects, where privacy is just one of them. Back to you, Alvin.
Thanks. Any comments from William and Lynn on that part in terms of where a person might be considering upgrading to GRC skills after their certification in privacy?
Yeah, I think that was a good explanation. I mean, I'm GRCP and GRCA for auditor, but that means as well as covering data protection, I might cover financial risk or strategic risk, operating risks of various kinds. So data privacy or data protection is a subset of it, but a very important subsection of it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so we are seeing actually more and more DPOs are now having to present to management or part of the management team. So having a GRC capability obviously puts you more relevant at the management committee meetings, yeah,
Sure.
because it is part of the GRC consideration. Okay, excellent. So let me see. Okay, one last question here. UP Open University offers certification. Is it honored in the global competency? I'm not sure if anybody can speak to this.
Yeah, maybe I can answer that, right? Today, if you look at all universities, there are university rankings. So the university is only as good as its reputation, right? So we know that if you look at all universities, there's a rating. For example, the Singapore universities are one of the tops in Asia, right? So while I cannot comment on the UP Open University, whether it's got global competency, you probably want to benchmark that against the listings, the global university listings, right? And just from that perspective, the Singapore universities are one of the top ones here. And if you add that to the fact that Singapore Management University conducts the data protection courses, that global reputation is there, but I'm unable, I apologize to comment, because the UP Open University is only as good as its reputation worldwide, right? Because you need to look at who did the course curriculum, yeah? And that also plays a pretty important role. And we all know that data protection, as you can see, is still very, very new. Yeah, there's very few expertise out there. So I hope that I've not exactly answered the question, but that's only as good as the global reputation of that tertiary institution.
Excellent. Thank you. So guys, some of you have been asking about, some of the links to the videos or the slides. Go into the forum. There's a second link there. And that's where we'll continue the conversation, what we're having today. And then we'll post also a highlight video for this particular webinar and a summary deck that we're going to be putting up there as well. That will be inside DPEX Network forum. Okay, so we encourage you to post questions and then any resources that we have. Again, this topic is going to be an ongoing one. It is after all trends of 2021. We're only in January, right? So if there are things that are going to be happening, we will also be posting in there, answering questions. So we look forward to see you in our future webinars. So we'll see you in the forums. From us at DPEX Network, we are happy actually to really help DPOs to be successful by yourself and also in front of your management and your team. So, engage us there. And for the one who was asking about, in terms of CIPM, passing rate, everything, DPEX Network has the largest body of professionals, and they do help one another. So if you're part of the network, then, you have a chance to actually collaborate and ask questions between one another. So that's a very powerful network. that fellow DPOs talk to one another, and we see a lot of active questions. So by all means, make use of that as well.
Now,
So,
Elvin, if I can interrupt, there's a question on training is not available on IIPP for CIPPA. I think is a good question to ask. And here's the answer. The only entity in the world conducting the IIPP course for CIPPA is actually the DPEX Network. So you can go to our dpexnetwork.org, look for the CIPPA, and you can sign up for the course for that person asking it, because IIPP does not provide the training, but we do. Yeah, and IIPP will administer the exam. Apologies, Elvin, back to you. Yeah.
No worries, no worries. So the person who posted, if you are in India, it's fine. You can attend online, right? We conducted nearly 2,000 work courses last year. A lot of it was online, right? So that's the benefit. Right now, we are going global. So thank you very much from everybody here. Lynn, William, Kevin, any last words from you guys? And then we will say bye-bye to these people.
Okay, last words for me, ladies and gentlemen. Watch out for more exciting things to come, right? And I will just end off by telling you that Trace Together and the WhatsApp fiasco are only the first of many other interesting developments you're seeing. But here's the thing, innovations, a lot of innovations you're seeing are going to create social concerns. And that means that the data protection law has to play catch up, right? That's my quick summary for all of you.
Excellent. Lynn?
I'm expecting a really fast-moving year and a lot of exciting things happening, especially in technology.
Okay, and I think for lawyers going to be quite busy because it looks like third-party due diligence is going up and up, yeah?
Yeah, and yes, it is from data protection, and also MAS is playing its part in that too.
Excellent. So that's another part who was asking somebody about impact of the new legislations changes. Third-party due diligence is going to feature quite heavily for you. Yeah. William?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting journey for all of us who are in this whole field of data protection, data privacy, and cybersecurity, and so on, because you can see a lot of forces are coming in. The regulators are tightening the regulations and enforcement. Your consumers and your customers are getting more knowledgeable about data protection practices, and they will start challenging organizations. And organizations are also under pressure to to adopt a holistic view of a GRC of data protection and other aspects of your organization's functions.
Thank you very much. So with that, guys, like I said, this is probably our third webinar, and it's as many as 3 weeks in January. So the topic of WhatsApp and all that, we're going to post a summary video very soon in the forum as well. So without any further ado, thank you very much for spending the afternoon with us, and we'll see you in the forum or the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. Look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Yeah.